You're live.
Thank you. So welcome to the Racial Profiling Ad Hoc meeting. We are delighted to come together once again as we move to try and wrap up the rest of this work. We are down to fine tuning and adding to the curriculum for the training sessions. And I know that we have a little bit to update you on, but maybe not enough to fill the entire hour and a half. So with that, Lieutenant Hubbard's okay for me to punt to you so you can tell us what updates we do have, or?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Let me actually, since we last spoke, I've been really chipping away at the lesson plan and the curriculum, and I have an understanding of which direction I'm heading in. Where I need help from stakeholders is I want to certainly develop the history of policing section, which I think should, I think can cover an entire day. But maybe also history of the United States. I talked about the 1619 project. Also, I actually spoke to Dr. Eberhardt today. I like to introduce her book, Biased, which if you haven't had a chance to read, it's a good read. And I told her my ambition for that. But those two alone can take up a whole day. So I've been chipping it away at that. And also, I think it's important just with adult learning to have.
Hold on for a minute.
Yeah.
You know, Deacon Lyles is on the spot. Would you put that back up, please?
Please go get this book.
There you go.
You
Yes.
said, please go get it?
Yes. Everyone
Okay.
can read it. And it should be mandatory reading for the Oakland Police Department, I would hope.
And if I can interject this, the only way we can do cultural change is by letting people know that this is the kind of material you want you to read, and then we test on it.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying? You want to be a sergeant, you want to be FTO or whatever. The information comes out of this kind of stuff.
Correct. And I appreciate that you were actually able to reach Dr. Eberhardt. Was she did she agree to provide some videos, or as we talked about, curriculum or anything, or is she agreeing to review anything? I just wonder, as it relates to those inquiries, if we got any mileage there.
Our meeting was actually a surprise because I came up to my office and she was meeting with one of my colleagues because we're renewing her contract. So we unfortunately couldn't get into the weeds about this project because she was in the middle of another one. But I'm really happy to see that we're moving along with her contract so we can utilize her services and those of Stanford regularly, including this.
So do you think that maybe we didn't hear from her because we're kind of out of contract, or?
We're not technically out of contract, but she's busy. I know she had some time away, but we're utilizing her services for other things that we're working on, not just this. And so I didn't ask for a reason. It's just I'm sure.
No. I'm just trying to get a sense of when you or we will be able to access her time. And it sounds like since she was involved in another meeting, we don't really have an answer to that.
We don't, but we did obtain her signatures on all the documents, so hopefully it's very soon.
Did you tell her that you had sent her an email?
I did not. No.
Come on, Hubbard.
I know. I'm not aggressive enough. I know.
Just a little bit.
I never met her, so I was so like, oh, I read your book, and I was so like caught up in the moment of like, oh, I read your book, and I know.
You can't be star watching, Hubbard. You're a star.
I wasn't prepared to see her. So
that's
anyway,
okay.
Leaning on her, and then also Darlene Flynn and Deputy Chief Shavies now hopefully we can get the ball moving. But I will say also, on top of the lesson plan and curriculum, I did write a draft letter to post just to get ready for that, to talk about what everything that we've done and just an introduction to the policy. And then later I'll plug in the details of our curriculum. So that will be ready to go not only to the post director, Manny Alvarez, but also the commission of post.
Yes.
And I did it. The one question I guess I had is I did write it. I ghost wrote it for Chief Mitchell, but I don't know if it needs to come from us as in the committee.
It's coming from us,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and I'll
Um,
make that change.
No, I appreciate that. And from that perspective, I know that we just reached out to Darlene and Deputy Chief Shavies. Were either of them able to be responsive about whether they could forward their curriculum or no?
Yeah, not today. No response. Yeah.
That's okay. We did it same day. Sometimes folks can't be that quickly responsive. As it relates to the draft of the letter, I guess it's not complete enough to share, or is it?
I don't mind sharing it.
Okay, because what I'm trying to get at is, it sounds like we don't quite have, excuse me, have enough additional information to be the most productive today. Would you agree or no?
That yes, I'm in agreement. But what I like to do, similar to what we did last time, I just like to just dig into it. So if I can send you all by email the letter to post and also the draft lesson plan, I would just love input from that alone. And I took some time off and I was starting to do a lot of external reading just to develop this stuff, and I want to continue that. So and any help that you all can provide would be fantastic.
Okay, so thank you very much. I do want to say, as it relates to our letter to post, I had lunch today with Chief Joshi, who served as a former deputy chief for OPD, and who I worked with on several policies. He made mention of the fact that post often references Oakland's policies and some of the policies that specifically the commission worked on, like armed and unresponsive and missing persons, as one of the most comprehensive, some of the most comprehensive policies in the state of California. So I do want to just share with everybody here that we have quite a reputation, which obviously we want to continue with the racial profiling policy. So I just wanted to share that. And for those that may or may not be aware, Deputy Chief Shavies, when he was lieutenant, partnered with Darlene Flynn of Race and Equity to provide trainings on, excuse me, bias and what's the other title, or racial bias or gender bias. And so I believe they were doing this training not just inside OPD, but city as well. Can you correct me if I'm wrong on that, Lieutenant Hubbard?
There were some, it was primarily for OPD.
Okay.
This is when Darlene Flynn was just getting started here. And yes, there were some external parties invited. But yeah, I think she made that point the last time she met with us, is that her training and curricula is not specific for OPDs, but for all city entities. Yeah.
Okay, I think that is also very exciting news. So once they receive our email requesting a look-see at the curriculum, or whatever narrative that they worked from, that maybe there are some opportunities to borrow, since the subject matter is the same, and quite frankly, the audience is pretty much the same. Wanted to welcome Chair Peterson and Commissioner Ricardo Garcia Acosta. I think we saw you a few minutes ago, but I was talking, so my apologies. So Deacon Lyles, do you have any questions as of this juncture?
No. I think,
okay.
Like I said earlier, I think if you really want to benefit Oakland and policing in California by example, is to take the curriculum, the information like Eberhardt's book and in Writers Come at Night, and try to synthesize some type of
Testing.
not just
applications.
questions, but understanding the concepts. I think
Okay.
it would be right for if somebody was going into after they doing the testing part in the oral interview part.
Yeah,
You follow me, Lieutenant Hubbard?
I do.
And then you asked candidates, explain to me what Jennifer Everhart was saying about Black males in chapter 4 of her
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, take them to class. That makes
Yeah,
really
and
good
say,
sense.
and then you don't spring it on them. You let them know that's exactly what we're going to test on.
Right, we're gonna teach from this,
So,
yeah.
just so the aggressive people will say, I got to get their book, and then they incorporate it, and they don't have to, even if they don't buy into it, we at least will know that they would know it.
Right, right. Lieutenant Hubbard, within the contract, does it call for any copies of the book or anything like that?
It does not,
Okay.
but I will say, so I think I mentioned this before when I was in charge of wellness, I had this ambition of building a cafe library in our
Yes.
wellness unit and purchasing books, and
Yes.
that's certainly on my list. And I, one step further, doing a book club in the academy. So in those in the academy have to read the book, and we would have discussion. So before they graduate, they're well versed in the subject.
I think book clubs are really fun.
Yeah.
Of course, I've done them with middle school and high school students. But I do have a question, Chair Peterson. Do you think that we have enough money in the budget to purchase biased for each commissioner?
I'm pretty sure we do.
Okay, so can we ask Micah to look into that? To order
Absolutely.
copies? Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect, thank you very much. So just want to kind of recap for those that are listening that we're going to be reviewing the beginnings of the lesson plan that Lieutenant Hubbard has developed, along with a draft letter to post, which was part of what we suggested we would do. And I would imagine that the same basic wording we can use when we address the Department of Justice as well. Is that an appropriate assumption, Lieutenant Hubbard?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we will either have you share your screen on the beginning of the lesson plan. And then we can kind of review it together and see if we have comments to add.
You all see that?
Oh, nice and big. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So as it stands now, I have it as a 3-hour class. Obviously, that's not long enough, but it's just me timing out, just teaching the general order in itself. So the objective, educate officers on the historical context, legal framework, and department policies regarding racial profiling and bias-based policing, ensuring fair and equitable law enforcement practices. Okay. So in here, I put obviously the policy, but there's obviously a free copy of Strategies for Change by Dr. Eberhardt there. And I will say to Deacon Lyles's point, this document is actually in our promotional exams. So sergeants and lieutenants testing for the position, and we are going through a lieutenant's exam right now, actually. They were required to read this document, not the book, but the document. However, to your point, which I do like, I think we can also write a proposal to the chief to mandate that either Writers Come Out at Night and or Biased by Dr. Eberhardt should be in the next cycle of promotional exams. We get to pick the books, and there's really no reason why those two books cannot be on those exams.
And
Oh,
I wouldn't even demand them to know the whole book. In Eberhardt's book, if my memory serves me, again, it would be chapter 4 and chapter 10. And because she documents the history of Oakland Police Department and how it treats African American males and a disproportional amount of stops that are made, which we're talking about here, racial profiling. And that's what chapter 4 is all about. And she puts the history there. And so my fear is this, is that because Oakland doesn't like or cannot stand facing up to who they are, they can't look at themselves in the mirror, they squash this kind of information. And somehow it's being told to them to walk away, don't pay attention to it. So the chief has to say, no, you shall read this. This is what we're going to test on.
okay. Well, historically, I do understand what you're talking about, and based upon Lieutenant Hubbard's very aggressive contributions, it sounds like there's an appetite to acknowledge the history and to try to change or improve the future outcomes. So Lieutenant Hubbard, with respect to the case studies, we could probably, so is there already a case study on Writers Come Out at Night, or you will be developing that?
Yeah, that needs to be developed. So I read that book twice and I really do enjoy it. And I met Ollie Winston and Darwin Von Graham and told them that to their face. And I have a connection with them. I'm wondering if they can also help with this. Is if I were to say, hey, we're not in a position right now where we can hand out all your books and have everyone read that and understand it. But if you were to teach a class on it, let's say, what sections are most important and what learning activities can we do, or case studies as a learning activity that we can do. And the way I guess I imagine this is, if let's say we take 5 key points in that entire book and we break the class up into groups, and then they have to actually read it and do a teach back to the class on what they learned with a quiz, whatever it may be. I find that very helpful. That's how I kind of imagine that project to be, but that's where I'm open to suggestions.
I think it sounds incredibly important and impactful. And quite frankly, I presume that they're doing, different book presentations. I think that it would be extraordinary for them to be able to say, the Oakland Police Department is currently using our book as a tool to teach about, what the history of racial profiling has been.
Right.
Okay, and so I think that's incredible. Why don't you reach out to them and ask them if they would be inclined to contribute a little bit. We don't have any money, but if they would like to do that, because I think it would, quite frankly, not just be a stroke, but a quality recommendation, a very thoughtful recommendation to invite their participation.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, when I was in school, you take a class or whatever in seminary, whatever, and they would say, here's the list of books. They never bought the books for me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, are we saying that these guys who's getting, $200,000 a year, we have to buy them the books too? No, we say this is the information, and that we're gathering our this is our source information, and
Yes.
we move you to buy the book.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that we buy for everyone, but I think, you know, inviting them to purchase early on in the academy or whatever, because even in your library, you're not likely to have 10 of each book, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I think
so,
I
yeah.
would cover it. I would cover it to have that little library you're talking about. Maybe make a purchase of maybe 3 or 4 books, and it's in the library. They will always be checked out. It'll never, and the aggressive guy will go and buy his own book. I just believe that.
No, I think that's really important. And as it relates to evaluations and things, I believe that there should be kind of a extra credit around, you know, thought leadership, if in fact they did. Because it will be an expectation. So I like your idea. And I'm just going to read in the chat. I believe, yeah, Micah has already ordered the books and they will arrive in time for our July 25th commission meeting. Thank you so much, Micah. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Lieutenant Hubbard, or I mean, I don't know who wants to add to this this overview.
Yeah, these are just the materials, and just going into the lesson outline. I have a welcome and objectives, just outlining it for everyone. And again, I haven't developed this beyond an icebreaker, but I believe in that just to get the class warmed up. Why understanding and preventing racial profiling is crucial for law enforcement and community trust. Section 1, I have a lot about the preamble, and this is the section I think I shared last time that I only have it as 20 minutes. I just don't, it's not sufficient. And I really want to spend most of our time talking about section 1, which is a preamble and just the history of Jim Crow laws, Dred Scott v. Sanford, and you know, racial profiling through the United States and the history of policing. And that's, of course, what I'm leading most on to our stakeholders. Cultural accountability. I have an idea of, I talked about how Stanford helped us before with Project Reset, and we do talk a lot about culture in that. There is a KQED old video about the history of the Oakland Police Department, and you can find it on YouTube, but it's a very interesting expose they did. And there's a lot of similarities about how we run our police department now to what we did before. And it was really the birth of community policing. So I'm thinking about showing that video again, because by the time we get around to this, a lot of people have forgotten what that video is. So it's kind of a good section to put that in. But okay, moving on to purpose. This again, specific to the policy, I spent some time talking about the penal code section and the implication for law enforcement practices, but also just reiterating our commitment to fair and equitable policing and the impact of bias practices in community trusts and police effectiveness. I see an opportunity there to talk about real examples throughout the United States. I think there's plenty to pull from. So I made a note to myself of just doing more research for that section. Definition of racial profiling, provide some examples. I think I took out the examples in the policy just because they're a little bit antiquated, or the ones that we have in there are a little bit antiquated. So I really want to spend the time in training to talk about real examples of racial profiling. And legal standards such as reasonable suspicion and probable cause, which even after one graduates the academy, those two definitions can still be confusing for many officers. Section 4, policy. spend probably a lot more than 30 minutes talking about this, but we talk about investigative detentions and searches. I really not so much want to give the academy version of this, but I want to talk about the intrusiveness of all of these types of things that we do, such as even handcuffing, especially has a section in there, detention, searches, handcuffing, the history of those, and how it can be perceived by our community. I do need to talk about just documentation. We're going through a season right now of confusion with their stop data reporting, only because our data is a little bit off. So I do need to spend a good section more on the technical side of this policy about how to properly fill out a stop data form and field investigative report. Consent searches, there's a section of the policy on that. So certainly going to talk about that. And then one thing that is not in the law, but is in the policy, is that we wrote in there that that if officers ask for a consent to search, they shall tell the person that they have a right to refuse that consent to search. Again, that is not mandated in law. Post does not mandate that, but we put it into our policy. So I'm going to spend some time talking about that.
That is very innovative. Very innovative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Section 6, conducting stops. This is also somewhat of a progressive section that we've never had before. Just the history of this is, I know we've worked a lot with our independent monitoring team on this, but we really want to move away from, you know, for example, walking up to a window after stopping someone and asking that person, hey, do you know why I stopped you? I mean, I think that's unprofessional and unnecessary.
Against the law now, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, well, it is and it isn't. Like, it's the law doesn't really give you a script to read, but it does say that you have to tell the person the reason why. And so if that's satisfied in the stop, then you're technically satisfying the law, but still it can be very curt and unprofessional. So we really want to hone in on professionalism. Here's how to identify yourself, tell the person the reason for the stop up front, and be respectful. And I do want to spend some time on that section, really hammering that home for people. And this is another section I made a note to myself. I would love to see body-worn camera of terrible interactions that officers had and positive interactions that officers had, and just show the difference of those two. Yeah. Handcuffing, that is going to be definitely longer than 10 minutes. I want to talk about the history a lot of handcuffing and how intrusive it is. We're coincidentally right now doing an audit on that, looking back 3 or 4 years of our practices with handcuffing. And hopefully by the time we finish that audit up, I can actually share that in this section so people have context to our handcuffing standards and possibly additional training that goes with it. Officer identification, it's not just for car stops or walking stops. It's general officer identification. And a lot of people assume, well, if I'm wearing a uniform and I have a badge, people are going to know who I am. And that may be true in a lot of cases, but someone suffering from mental health crisis, for example, may not, but also the community. So we are driving that home, just the importance of officers identifying themselves when coming in contact with anyone. So we're going to really flush that out in this training. We have a section on examples of racial profiling. There might be some overlap here, but I really want to have some real discussion on that, not just the very generic example. I really want some good examples to invoke some thought and discussion on examples of racial profiling. So I have a note to myself. Hopefully I'll get some good feedback there. Stop data collection. Again, very technical side of this policy, but just the importance of documenting everything correctly. But I shared this before, a significant change of the policy is our supervisors the need for them to review this thoroughly and sign off after the review in a timely fashion, so we're not behind on our data. So I know really technical, but that is going to be a significant topic discussion in this training. Member responsibilities. Again, I think this is going to be a good learning activity also about officers preventing and reporting racial profiling if they are witness to it. We can get really deep into the weeds about other things, just about police culture, and it's not just specific to racial profiling, but all misconduct. So it's a really good opportunity for us to line up a different policy on that, and then also talk about the disciplinary actions that can come about from condoning, allowing, or participating in racial profiling. With that is handling complaints. So in the case that someone does complain or bring up the issue of racial profiling, there'll be a discussion on officers' responsibilities with that, and also the role of internal affairs. I'll probably add in there the role of the CPRA, because they have a role also in this, because it has profiling and bias in it. That is one of those subjects that they investigate, similar to use of force. So I'll probably add a section. I will add a section on the CPRA and how they do that. The training also has a subcomponent of it about continuous training, also introducing officers to the cadence of that. I know that the city of Oakland produces good but somewhat generic training on internal biases. It's not just external, just with each other within the city of Oakland. There's probably going to be a component here on the need to get that done. It's online. It's actually interactive, and it's actually pretty well done. It's by NeoGov, if you're not familiar with that. But I'm probably going to write in here the mandate that for you to complete this training, you also have to complete that training to sync them up. The city mandates it, and we just did an audit on that, and most of the city employees, certainly here, it's not not everyone has done it. So this is probably a good opportunity for us to close the loop on that. Going to spend a good section. By the way, a lot of our training is split up by rank, and I just don't agree with that, especially with this topic. So I hope there's a good mixture of officers, supervisors, and also commanders in the classroom. And one of the discussions is going to be the supervisory role, with how they're supposed to audit officers to detect profiling, and also how they write their reports. So there'll be a pretty good section. I think it's going to be good that everyone in the room gets to hear that. But we're going to provide lessons on that, and also the review process for field investigative reports and stop data forms, and making sure that they're accurate and thorough. I will talk about the Officer of Internal Accountability, which is where I'm assigned, and their role in conducting audits to ensure compliance with policy. I have a team of professional staff who will be performing these audits, so they were going to get their own lesson just on what we're looking for and how to do those audits correctly. And put in there our partnership with Race and Equity, because we have not utilized Darlene Flynn and Chief Shavies in, I think it was when they started in 2019. There is a good section of our department who don't know that we have a race and equity team within the city of Oakland. So I want to spend some time talking about that, just why the city of Oakland adopted that. Maybe have Darlene Flynn, if possible, be a guest speaker. If not, maybe we record it and we can just put it on repeat for different classes. But I really want to make sure that everyone walks away with a solid understanding of the purpose behind that. And then we have a whole section on the discipline and manual of rules violation section. So everyone walks away knowing that we created a brand new manual of rules violation. So first is conduct towards public racial profiling. So that's 314061. That's a severe one. And then we have the technical violation of the policy, which is the second section that we all wrote, and that's all listed here. So at the very end, I have a group discussion. Of course, I really need some help here. Participants will discuss challenges and strategies for implementing the policy, and then share personal experience and insights on preventing racial profiling. Very generic, I know, but it just kind of bookmarks it for me that I need to come back to that. I do have, as part of this, a quiz. So I have just a conclusion, which is a recap and closing remarks, but I do have a draft quiz. I suppose I can send that to all you also, based on the policy, just for review. They'll participate in a quiz, and there'll be some remediation if people fail that. And then we'll do feedback forms just so we can make this better based on the feedback. So that's the 5-page, very broad lesson plan that I hope to continue to develop as we work through this. Oh, did it go away? All right, any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I haven't fleshed this all out yet, but I think it's I really think it's important based on the most recent current events and the conversation and the zeitgeist that's going on in Oakland now about response times and officers not there and calling 911 and nobody's answering and all that kind of stuff. Okay. I think it's important, if we do this training, that we make a statement that vigilant, wise, proactive, present policing, ethical policing, and absent lackadaisical avoidance policing are not they should be mutually exclusive. In other words, I want an aggressive police department. I just want an ethical one. I want a wise one. I want a very present officer, walking and on the street corner and all of that, because that creates a perception of safety and a perception of apprehension in those who have been on committing criminal acts. So I'm thinking that this phenomenon that we're experiencing now is because folks who dip around the Bay and do all what they do around the Bay have a perception, rightly or wrongly, that OPD is not coming. 45 minutes response time and all that kind of stuff. Now, that's, to me, grates on me. It's like scratching your nails on a chalkboard. It just irritates me like I don't know what to even discuss it. But we have to face that, because not only do the criminals think that's the perception, our citizenry think that's the perception. So we got to say, look, we're telling you to do this this kind of policing, this non-bias policing and non-racial profiling policing, but it does not exclude you from doing vigilant and aggressive police work. We think both of them can occur at the same time. We're convinced that that's our target goal. It's not one or the other. Every time I stop somebody, you're saying I'm doing it because you're Black. Okay, I'm not stopping anybody now. That's what's scaring me. And I can't prove that, but I've never in my life heard of a 45-minute response time. Nowhere. And you can't take pride in it. So it makes me think, I know young officers are coming out of the academy. They're aggressive. They want to catch the bad guy. That's why they got into the business. If you're not a policeman or you never wanted to be one, you may not understand this. But they want to they really want to save the damsel in distress. They're acculturated like that. So to not respond and drive in a circle and then beep, 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 blah, blah, blah is going on, da, 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 and you yawn and slow down, that's an anathema to a police department's effectiveness and ethical policing, and it's just going to destroy the trust that the citizens have for them. That's what I'm hearing now, and it seems like the media's putting all of that up. That 76 station. We can't dodge that. All of the businesses closing down on Hegenberger Road, which Hegenberger Road was a cash cow for the citizens, for the general fund, for the general fund of Oakland. Hegenberger Road, hotel tax, rental car tax, gasoline tax, restaurant tax. All that money didn't go to Sacramento. That went directly to the city of Oakland. So not to do anything and to let it just erode has to be contrived. I can't imagine the money people are saying, hey, we got to do something different. We got a sieve here and we're losing money. Our money is coming out of our pockets. So we have to make a statement in this training. Our expectation is that you can be vigilant, you can be aggressive, and you can be present simultaneously while you're being ethical and respectful and non-biased. That kind of policing does exist, and it can exist in Oakland, and that's what we're looking for. All of this, we're not really that bad. I don't want to talk about that. That's already proven. It's been written about. Books have been sold on it. Get over it. So that's where we have to go with this, I believe. So Lieutenant, I think you have to start your training off of almost with a mini sermon, a mini ethical standard about this is where we're going. Mm-hmm. And we think if we employ these objective steps that we're gonna be trained on, that's how we get to this goal where we do have aggressive police officers. We do stop the right people. I want the right people stopped on the street because of probable cause.
Yeah.
And I want them asked, may I search your car? No, but I still want you to ask. I want that kind of policing. People have to understand that you just don't have a field day to come out and figure like, well, if we just 50 or 60 of us go into the store and take everything we want and run out, the police won't show up for 40 minutes.
Right. Thank you, Deacon Lyles. I think you're on to something really important. I also recognize that Chair Peterson has her hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to add too that there is something being disseminated out there in Oakland that police officers are putting out there themselves that, well, we can't do this because we don't, the city council hasn't. The city council is defunding us, or we don't have the money. And so there, as Deacon Lyles says, there's something in the ethos out there now about Oakland and it not really aggressively or even appropriately responding to the what's going on, the criminality that's going on right now. And I don't know if you have to have an all hands on this right away to somehow at your roll call to tell your officers that to not respond to a call or to not intervene is because it's because of the money or the lack of money. It is somehow deteriorated the I don't know, the way the citizens view Oakland and the way the criminals are now viewing Oakland, that our police are just not there for us. And we really have to do something quickly. I know this is a long-term plan that we're putting together now, but something has to be done immediately.
Well, isn't this more of a, I don't know what your customer service training looks like, or if it is even called that. You know, client excellence or anything like that. Is there anything that speaks to the requirement or the absolute critical necessity that police officers are in service to community, and so therefore they should be providing their highest, most best, integrity laden investigation or queries of community or anything like that? I'm rambling, but
No, you're right on target. It's called the oath of office. They take an oath. They're
yes.
sworn in. They swear before God and country that we're going to protect and serve. And everything you talked about is in that oath. And so what's happening is culturally, again, we can't prove any of this. This is all perception, is that, you know, I'm not going to rush out there and get involved. I got to go home at night. That's one dynamic. The other one is I want to get home and I don't want to get injured. Oh, okay. No one wants to get injured. I get that. The second thing is, you know, they don't support us. Our budgets are being cut. No, your budget is not being cut. Your budget has been increased. That's a lie. And if individual officers are saying that kind of stuff, that's who should be fired. That's an attack on the esprit de corps. You can't get any kind of unit cohesion if you got people saying, you know, hey, look, let's just sit on our hands and slow walk our way to a 911 call. We're just going to drive slowly. Why? Because we don't want anybody to say we drove too fast. It's ridiculous. That does not make sense, and they get paid too much money, way too much money to take that position. And it must be true circumstantially, because I've never seen where 80 people got together and went to one location and robbed it. That's coordination. That's almost political. It's so contrived, it's almost political. And I know this is a public thing. I know this is going out publicly, but the only way you can wrestle with these concepts is somebody has to say, think about this. How is it that how could you line up 80 people saying, don't worry about it. We're going to go in there and steal cigarettes and everything else in store, and nothing's going to happen to you. Why? Because the police are not coming. You have to believe that to participate.
That's right. That's right. I see Commissioner Garcia Acosta's hand up.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I really welcome this discussion. It's so important, mainly because it, you know, whether it's true or not, perception is reality. And what we see playing out on the streets of Oakland is exactly that, what we're describing here. And I think the same way that we really explicitly and intentionally call out the cultural accountability statement and some of the work that we've been doing, right? I think we really need to be very intentional on how, especially on the training and on the front end of officers joining the force, of really speaking clearly and saying, look, the implementation of the law shall not, cannot, will not be politicized. And also understanding and recognizing, hey, as bad as of a history as we have in Oakland and policing and why we're doing all this stuff to begin with and why we're invested in this type of oversight, calling out and saying, hey, we all know Oakland does not have a great track record of our politics, right? And the type of disruption that actually ends up playing out in the day-to-day operations, whether it be in policing or in social services or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we need to call out within our police department, our young cadets that are joining the force, that are going through the trainings, to say, look, you see in the news, there's scandals left and right. It ain't gonna be the first scandal, ain't gonna be the last scandal. Unfortunately, Oakland has had its well-documented share of scandals. And regardless of what side you lean on politically, what newspaper you read, what you read at night, these things are objective. Following the law is objective. How you interact with the community is objective. And to Deacon Lyle's point, it's absolutely correct. I work with youth every day, and they got a cheat code. They know exactly very well, oh, if you punch it, the police aren't going to follow you. That spreads like a wildfire. So one of the things I guess I'm trying to think about as well too is, how do we have strong public messaging along with some of these policies, right? And I love what Deacon Lyles was bringing up earlier in terms of the yes and. How do we say, we love our community, we're here to serve our community, but if you break the law, we're going to actively pursue you, we're going to arrest you, and we're going to work with our public officials, regardless of politics, to make sure that there's consequences out here on the streets of Oakland.
Right.
And those are the type of messages that, once young people or people that are committing crimes start hearing that stuff, that spreads just as fast. Oh man, they're not playing around no more. And so I think, go ahead. So I just wanted to just put another nail in that coffin, man. Kick that dead horse, whatever cliche you want to use. We got to figure out a way to hold that line and call it what it is. We're saying this for a reason. We have seen it firsthand, cops politicizing their ability to say, poor me, I can't do my job because I'm getting my hands tied.
That's
Right, and that's just like the campaign of "It's Your Business," right? Yeah, we do have to figure out how to say we all expect to be dealt with respect, give and receive. And I'm sure you probably can't go around changing the oath. But yeah, there should be a campaign where it's, I hate using the word sexy, popular, whatever you want to call it, to do the right thing. And if you do the wrong thing, and I'm coming for you,
that's
you go to jail.
Yeah, or fired. We don't want you. We don't want you if you don't want to put in 8 hours work and be aggressive in doing it. I don't think aggressive is a bad description. I want wise officers. I want ethical officers. But I don't want you yawning. Somebody dials 911 and we need you over here. Well, they don't like us over there, so we're gonna slow down. I remember this phenomenon happening going back 100 years now, 1976, when the Berkeley Police Review Commission started. I was there as a young officer, 3rd year, and we were told by the older officers, oh, they're gonna take away your badge, they're gonna take away your gun, you don't cooperate. You know what? We became a better police department because of the Police Review Commission. Because we became more ethical. So we have to face that.
Yeah.
It's almost like there are no mirrors in the Oakland Police Department, using as metaphor mirrors, like they don't see themselves. And we got to see where we are. We can write all the policies we want, but if they slow walking on 911 calls, well, 50 people can go in to a 76 station and just shoplift it empty, and no one comes, no sirens, no anything.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's just asking for another one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of in Oakland right now, in the county, the mayor's under a recall, the DA's under a recall. We do have a new police chief, but there's just something about the breakdown of the political structure that supports these, our community and envelops our community. It's all breaking down. I think it's just, it feels like a collective nervous breakdown going on in Oakland. And our police department plays an important part of making sure that there is just not random lawlessness like what we saw with that 76 station. I mean, that's being shown all around the country.
All over the
People
world.
are saying, and they're saying, people contacting me, what is going on in Oakland?
Yeah.
So how do you rally your troops, DC Hubbard? How do you invigorate them and recharge them around their, their oath? I remember coming to the academy graduation and reading that oath. Deacon Lyles is right. It's all in there. How often it made me think about how in grade school we had to begin the morning with, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. You all need to maybe dust off that oath and talk about it at your, is it the roll call? Isn't that what you do the first thing in the morning?
We do.
Yeah, somehow you gotta bring this around to them and invigorate them around their oath.
Well, I know if we're doing this training, we can't do this training without starting there first, what we're talking about now.
Yes.
Hey, this is our goal. Our goal is to eliminate bias policing, but not at the expense of policing.
Right.
We got to have effective and ethical policing, and they're not mutually exclusive. It's not, you can have both. You can have non-biased policing, and you can have aggressive ethical policing at the same time, and that's what our of office is all about.
So when I think back on George Floyd and the fact that Derek Chauvin was the training officer,
Yes.
and there were 3 rookies basically on the scene,
frozen,
unable to execute any intervention, at least in their mind. And I don't know how you could look at what was going on and not think that was just wrong in every which way. How do you select your training officers? Who are they?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. It's we have a pretty rigorous program that one has to go through to even become a field training officer. They have to apply, and they have to be they have to be accepted by their chain of command, and there's actually a write-up for each stage of the chain of command. So the sergeant has to review and write something supporting them or not. Lieutenant does the same, captain does the same, deputy chief does the same. And then there is an assessment center and a written exercise that one has to do. And then the chief makes the final decision. So basically it's almost like submitting a resume, and they have to prove themselves to be not only a good police officer, ethical, but one who has a passion for teaching. Yeah.
Well, and we know there's that teaching, and then there's teaching that is the unofficial classroom teaching.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And that's the cultural teaching, and no one who's been in the business can deny the existence of that. They'll lie about it to people who are not in the business, but it happens, and it happens all over the world in law enforcement. It happens. So now that exists, how do we know that exists? What you mentioned, Marsha, earlier about those officers with Derek Chauvin, they knew for a fact they got out of line, they're gone.
Yeah, but that's what we need to disrupt.
Well, we also need to say, if you go around saying, you tell somebody that the reason why you didn't show up is because Citizen Oakland's not paying me enough money or whatever, they defunding us or whatever kind of crap that is, then that person ought to be terminated.
That's what we need to disrupt. Absolutely. So a lot of what I am hearing is officers come out of the academy, but are reculturated in some regard. And it's at that point, I think it's those training officers and even the sergeant level that a lot of this may have to be targeted at.
Well, we have examples of sergeants who said some things, even in the training academy. If you remember, Riders Come Out at Night, that's well documented.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
We have evidence of that. And Oakland has its own academy and does its own academy.
Yes.
So maybe that's something to look into.
Well, I think that because Oakland can have its own academy, that we can tailor what it is that we want the officers to learn and perpetuate and be accountable for. We can tailor make it to our history and weed out the kind of behavior that we don't want, because I think most of the officers now in OPD are baby officers, right? New officers, right, Lieutenant DC Hubbard?
They are, yes.
Yeah.
Very young, yes.
And they're just coming out of the academy. They're being thrown to maybe more seasoned officers who have a certain maybe viewpoints, which is what we want to refine. I think it's at that training level and that training officer level, sergeant level, that this kind of training would be most impactful. Yes, in the academy, introduce them to all of it, but make sure it sticks. And I think that's with the training officers and the sergeant level. I don't know, this training that we're discussing, at what level were we gearing it? Just at the academy level? Because, yeah.
It would be with everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the fact that you wanted a mixed ranking in the class. I like that, because that will eliminate the kind of rowdiness that the boys get together and do. But if they see a couple of lieutenants and captains in the room, that there's, we're paying attention now, and so the captains they should not all sit in the front. They should strategically be, sparsed around the room, and they ought to keep their eyes open and making sure they see who's making the wise, comments.
The wise
again, it's imperative that we do something dramatically different.
Yeah.
We can't do this training like the training that has been delivered before. It has to be different. Second point, you can't be the one doing all the training. You're phenomenal, and I see you prophetically. I'm gonna say this: you're gonna be somebody's chief of police, because you get it, and you get it quickly, and you're not offended by getting it quickly. It's attractive. New ideas don't insult you. Okay, and so you don't mind being coachable. So we need to have not just you deliver this message. You need people from city government. You need people from the community. You need advocates delivering this training. And they ought to be in the training with you. When you're saying so-and-so, Regina and Marsha ought to be in there going through the class with you, observing it. And okay, so they're uncomfortable. That's what we want. That's what we want. And we want.
You gotta do.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you have to disrupt.
Yeah,
You just really have to disrupt it.
you can't do it the same way. And so they go, oh, we don't want. Okay, fine. We got all of that. And push that one aside. But the one or two that's there that are coachable, that's leaning in, there's your sergeants and lieutenants.
Yeah.
And somebody ought to be saying that. You know, if you want to be an officer for 30 years and retire, fine. That's a great career. But if you want to work yourself up the chain of command, then you better catch the latest wave that's coming on the beach. And they never stop coming. So you got to recognize what's new, and you got to get on that surfboard and ride it. And this is new. What you're writing,
Yes.
actually, this is a PhD dissertation you're doing. You need to know that.
Yes.
You need to know that. You need to spend some more time into it, write it, but get that first part. This is our expectation of you. And we know it can be done. We've seen it done in other departments around the country. And if it hasn't been done around the country, we're going to be the first one to do it. And see, I actually think that if I'm the chief of police, that's my line. That's what I want to deliver.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Regina, Marcia, you need to be dropping notes to the chief. You know, we need you, and this is the role we need you to function as.
Yes.
You
I had a chat with him a couple weeks ago. He understands what my expectations are.
Yeah. How can I help? This is how you help. You let folks know that if they catch on to this quickly, that's who you want to be looking at for promotion.
And so again, back to this application to be a training officer. How much of this type of work or this type of thinking and this methodology that we want to develop is in that application? I mean, what do you look at?
I don't think it's in there at all because we're just developing now.
Yeah, so that's what I'm concerned about. Those are the type of documents that we need to be also looking at to determine whether or not we're picking the right training people. Because what I hate is that we're pushing these young officers out there. We want to make sure that they're so ripe to hear the new way, the new thinking, the new how to. And we don't want them to be corrupted in any way. Not that I'm saying, DC Hubbard, that training officers are corrupt. I just want to make sure that at that level that, I mean, they kind of like are they're the first line, aren't they? When the officers come out of the academy.
You are.
Yeah. So that person is so important to solidifying what it is we want done in Oakland. We need to look at how those people are selected as well.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. No disagreement there.
And this is
Well, then how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the accepting of the FTO pool. And well, I mean, I'll just give you the simple one. We have an oral board process assessment center, and we can, similar to a promotional exam, invite community input into that. So let's say we have a commissioner sit on the assessment center. So you are actually face to face with the FTO candidate, and we can ask these questions like, okay, what have you done to follow policy, and reduce bias, show customer service to the Oakland community. So so that's an easy one that we can do.
Okay, sounds good. Yes.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Okay.
You know, when I was working in the city government short period of time in Oakland, they said that we can only ask a few questions, and we have to ask these few questions to every candidate. Otherwise, we will be accused of being biased. Is that still employed?
Certainly for promotional exams, FTO, we want to be fair. So we want to ask the same questions across the board. But I mean, before the assessment center begins, I mean, we can make the questions as hard as we want and as open-ended as we want. Yeah.
Well, that's what the work is.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I believe that's where the work is. Yes.
So where do we go now? Have we contributed enough to the lesson plans? We're certainly supposed to, let's see, we'll receive the book. So we probably will not have read it before we complete this.
Yeah.
So we'll be getting some excerpts from you based upon what you add to it.
Like I said, could we just start off by reading chapter 4?
4 and 10, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm not saying don't read the whole book. The whole book is excellent, but you can jump ahead to chapter 4, read it, and it speaks just to what Marcia was speaking about.
Yeah. Okay. Lieutenant, does that work for you?
It does, yeah. So I have two things. The first one is, speaking of help with teaching this, which I certainly do need the help, and how we can sync this up with field training officers, is I really want to leverage the field training officers to help me teach this. And that, I think, is the best way to make that connection.
Excellent.
Yeah. The second one is, I will email out the lesson plan that I showed you, but also the draft letter to the post commission and executive director. So feel free to edit that. So that's the one thing two things I will do certainly this evening when we log off.
Can we have non-sworn people do some of the teaching?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. We got to have non-sworn people doing the teaching.
For sure.
They got to see that the people who they're serving don't wear uniforms.
Right.
Yeah.
So Lieutenant Hubbard, thank you,
Lieutenant Hubbard.
providing an overview.
Yes.
So what we'll be also expecting is a response from Chief Mitchell, some kind of reaction to the racial profiling documentation that we've already shared. As I mentioned, after I sent it to the Federal Monitor, he, gratefully received it, but he didn't have any follow-up except for, it was, I don't know, good to connect with me or something. But then what I heard from Lieutenant Hubbard is that the Monitor, if he's actually going to spend some time on it, he wants it to be formally requested by the chief. Do I have that right?
That's right. They offer what's called technical assistance, but it's basically our final version of what we think the version would be, and then we send it to them. So once the chief weighs in and is comfortable where we are at, then I'll make that official request to the monitoring team.
Okay, all right. And so we will be receiving a few documents. If we can get our hands on bias before it comes in 2 weeks, read away, especially chapter 4 and 10. And then if you want to send feedback on those 2 documents in email, that will be great, because as I mentioned, we are really trying to wrap this particular policy up. And the lesson plan is the last piece, and I know there's lots of good information out there that we're already using in OPD. So whatever Dr. Eberhardt can add to it will be great. There we go. So our next meeting, Micah, is that the 24th?
I'm right here, just trying to get off mute. Let me see. Our next meeting is the 24th. Yes, you are correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, and that meeting will be back in City Hall, as tomorrow's meeting is at Allen Temple, for those of us who may have forgotten. I know Deacon Lyle's ready. And so we have a little bit of work to do with those things, because it will be really nice if Lieutenant Hubbard could get all of our feedback, let's say by the 17th, and then come back to the 24th with an updated document. Does that work for everyone?
Sure.
Okay, terrific. Well, we're gonna give you back just a little bit of time, 13 minutes. But
Thank
with
you.
this kind of heat, I know we can think of things to do with that time. Again, want to really appreciate you, Lieutenant Hubbard. You get it.
Yes.
And we appreciate all the hard work.
Get it.
Our community members, Deacon Lyles, you know, you always show up and show out, and my fellow commissioners and everyone that's listening. Thank you for joining us and supporting us. This is going to be another incredible policy.
Yeah.
Good night.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
And
Night.
thanks, Micah. Didn't want to leave you out.
Good night, Michael.
Good night.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good night, everyone.